Hello everyone, we are now on our second lesson of Germany Unit 7, all about Hitler's foreign policy, and today we're going to be looking at the events that took place in the Rhineland. Now the Rhineland, it was a region of Germany that was actually lost during the signing of the Treaty of Versailles. It was taken away from Germany. Now this area also contains the Ruhr, which was kind of right around here in this region. And the Ruhr Valley is where a lot of German industry was. So this took a serious hit to the German economy when this land was taken away. We're going to be talking about today why the Rhineland caused so much issue for Germany and for the Allies in the lead up to the Second World War. I'm going to set a little bit of context now. A good idea for you to do is just to pause the video in a moment and just have a read through each paragraph and try to fill in the blanks using your own knowledge. All the information here to fill in the blanks is stuff that we've already covered in the past few weeks and in the past few months as well. So take a few moments, pause the video, have a read through each paragraph and see if you can fill the blanks in. When you're ready to take those up, just hit play. Okay, great. So we've had a chance to look at some of the blanks to fill in. Let's start off with the first paragraph. The First World War ended in 1918. Germany surrendered by signing the Treaty of Versailles, which set out restrictions on the nation. One restriction was Germany would lose roughly 13% of its colonies and territories as a part of the reparation payments, with some of these areas being run by the League of Nations. As Hitler worked to fix the problems caused by the Great Depression, he made it very clear to the Allies that he felt the Treaty of Versailles was unfair. This led the British to adopt a policy of appeasement to try and keep Hitler happy and avoid any future conflict. Hitler wanted to see what he could get away with. He was convinced the Allies wanted to avoid war so badly that they would do nothing if he took land back that was lost under the Treaty of Versailles. Much like the Munich Push, the Rhineland made Hitler more popular as he was actually taking actions against the Allies. Now, this is a point we're going to go into a little bit more detail about Hitler gambling on the fact the Allies will do nothing if he takes back land that was taken from him under the Treaty of Versailles. So looking at the Rhineland in a bit more detail, why was the Rhineland demilitarized? Who was in control of the Rhineland? And why would Hitler want to put his soldiers here? So you'll notice if you look at the legend that this pattern denotes the demilitarized zone, and that's this area here. So demilitarized, it essentially means exactly what we think it does. It means no army is allowed in this region. So why was it demilitarized in the first place? Well, to be able to answer that, we need to go ahead and have a look at this country here, because they're going to be a major player in the signing of the Treaty of Versailles. And you'll notice that the Rhineland, it actually borders onto France. Now, France wanted some kind of guarantee that Germany would not invade as they had in the First World War. And this seemed like the best possible solution. So the Rhineland was set up kind of as a buffer zone, if that's what you want to call it. So this area here, no soldiers from Germany's side were allowed in this region. And what that meant is that if Germany ever wanted to invade France, they would have to go through the Rhineland. That would give France some time, maybe a day or two, to try to get their soldiers up to the edge of the Rhineland to guard against any kind of attack. It was incredibly unlikely that Hitler would go through Belgium or the Netherlands or go through Switzerland to get into France, because these countries were trying to remain out of the conflict and getting involved. They wanted to remain neutral. So who was actually in control of the Rhineland? Well, it was being run by the Allies. So the League of Nations did have a bit of a hand in it, but it was mainly the French and the British who were administering this area, and Hitler wanted to have it back under German control. So why would he want to put his soldiers back into the Rhineland? Well, it's to take control over the natural resources. If you look at the size of the Rhineland in comparison to the size of Germany, it's a fairly significant chunk of land that was taken away. And on this land, there's things like timber, there's iron, there is petrol, there's all these things that the German economy needs to grow and to stabilize. And if Hitler can get the Rhineland back, he can hopefully rebuild Germany. A little bit more detail about the Rhineland. It was an area of West Germany. It was demilitarized because of the Treaty of Versailles. Hitler sent his troops to reoccupy the Rhineland on the 7th of March, 1936. And as we said, this was a really big gamble for Hitler. He knew that it could go two ways. The Allies could fight back, or they could be submissive and do nothing about it. And Hitler decided to gamble on this because he knew that the British especially believed the Treaty of Versailles was too harsh. So there was almost this element of sympathy towards the Germans from the British, where the British felt Treaty of Versailles too harsh on them, and they should be allowed to have some of that land back. Now, when Hitler gambled, it actually succeeded, but this taught him a very dangerous lesson. It showed him that the Allies would not fight back. This is going to be a very dangerous lesson for Hitler to learn, because he's now finding out in 1936 that if I really want something, all I have to do is take it, because everyone in Europe is afraid I'm going to start a war, and if they tell me no, they think that I will then cause a conflict. So as long as I just take what I want, the Allies probably will not try and stop me. So a little bit more detail to show you where, in terms of some cities in Germany, the Rhineland actually was. And we're going to be focusing on Cologne. It's written Köln here. That's how you say Cologne in German. But this was a bit of a gateway into the Rhineland. So all of this area here, we're just going to highlight. This is essentially the borders of the Rhineland. So this kind of area here. So this is where the Germans really wanted to take back to get all the industry, all the natural resources back for their country. So Cologne's going to be a bit of a gateway. Now, the Rhine River also runs right along. We can see, I just traced it with the highlighter. And that's going to be very helpful in terms of shipping, in terms of getting natural resources in and out of Germany, and also into the center of Germany to be sold. So we have a picture. This was taken in 1936 on the 7th of March, and these are German soldiers who are marching into the Rhineland. And this is a bridge that goes into Cologne over here in the back. This is the other side of the river, and they're marching into the city center. So these soldiers are marching in this direction. They're marching across the bridge this way here. This is Cologne Cathedral in the background, and again just showing you where Cologne is on a map. And there's our Rhineland again. So how did people react to Hitler marching into the Rhineland? What did Hitler convince Germans of? And lastly, why did so many Germans support Hitler's foreign policies? We're going to watch about a 5-minute video, then we'll take up these questions before finishing off.
To regain our place among the strong nations of the world. Hitler's seductive promise. The Versailles Treaty had left Germany weak. If Germany rearmed, the Allies could invade. Hitler had called their bluff. He'd pulled out of disarmament talks. He'd brought back army training for all German men. And in '36, he'd marched into the Rhineland, a buffer with France where no German troops had been allowed since 1990.
The Gazette presents the first actual pictures to reach this country of the German troop movements, which have caused the biggest political sensation of recent times.
Where does it all lead? To a new war or to a shorter peace?
Hitler talked of peace often. It wasn't a contradiction. He said he was arming Germany not for war, but defense. Like the hedgehog, Germany would be secure but threaten no one. Many European leaders found this reasonable. Ambassadors were sent to shake Hitler's hand. Meanwhile, Germany stockpiled arms, built submarine bases, and trained bombers in secret in Russia and Spain.
He wants war. Why can't they see that? He thinks 1918 is unfinished business. So childish. It would be laughable if it weren't so tragic.
And are there many who think like you?
No. I think most would cheer him all the way. But I'll tell you something. Each time he takes a gamble, announcing national service, marching into the Rhineland, beforehand, each time there were arrests, pacifists and so on, taken to the camps. Everyone knows someone who's disappeared. Just a little terror. But would they do this if they truly believed we all supported them?
But Hitler did have the support of the great majority. Maybe not for war, not at first, but Hitler convinced the German people war would make Germany strong. And after so many humiliations, he'd fed a deep desire for revenge. By 1938, the year Nora Wall left for England, Germany was on a war footing.
They say that their army is the most powerful ever seen. I don't think they're bragging. When Germans do something, they do it well. They have 1 million men trained to fight, more in reserve, and every resource in Germany at their disposal. Arms factories, shipyards working day and night, miners on 14-hour shifts. They're cutting down the park railings, rationing the butter, whipped cream, white bread, personal freedom sacrificed.
So, Nora. Nora. Prost.
Oh, go on then, one more, why not?
You can tell them how good Germany is.
I hope you have a good journey. It's been great having you here.
You've been lovely. It's been really, really lovely having you.
Thank you.
To Nora,
Nora.
a wonderful guest.
To Hitler.
The day that I left, it was the Fuhrer's birthday, April 20th, 1938. Parades in every town, just like the day I arrived. Flags, cheering crowds, but this time too, tanks and armored trucks. I was a bit the worse for wear. The night before, they had sent me off, Eric and Ursula, toasting me, toasting Germany, toasting Hitler. I stayed very quiet. I don't think they noticed.
It's as if the whole working strength of every man, woman and child is power concentrated in the Führer's fist. And with that, he carves our future. How a people forces its way upwards is unimportant, but the goal is magnificent.
And you know, I don't think it was the drink that made their faces glow with such radiance.
Great, so we've had a chance to look at the clip. Now we're going to take up our 3 questions. So the first one is asking, how did people react when Hitler marched into the Rhineland? And we saw in the video that most people were quite positive about this. This isn't to say that some Germans disagreed with Hitler or they thought that this was an irresponsible decision, but most people were quite positive and they were glad that Hitler was actually doing something. Let's not forget the Germans lived through the Weimar Republic, who did very little in some cases to try to solve problems. So to see Hitler actively trying to rectify issues of the Great Depression and to fight back against the Treaty of Versailles went down quite well. What did Hitler convince Germans of? Well, he convinced them all that war would solve their problems, that conflict would fix everything, and Germany just needed to take back land that was wrongfully taken from them. If they had more land, if they had more space, everything would be fine again. This also ties into the policy of Lebensraum, of living space, where Hitler said, the more land we have, the stronger our people will be. And our last question, why did so many Germans support Hitler's foreign policies? There was an element of revenge. People felt that they were essentially wronged in the First World War by the November criminals who signed the Treaty of Versailles, by the army that gave up. But there was also an element of desperation where people had no other choices. Time for bonus facts. The Rhineland was Hitler's most nervous moment. Hitler actually wrote not long after the events in the Rhineland that it was the most nerve-wracking experience of his life because he didn't know for certain if the Allies would fight back or not. Now, Hitler fought in the First World War. He fought in the trenches, and even though he was a messenger and he wasn't always at the front lines, he was injured on multiple occasions in the First World War. So he was a guy who was exposed to danger uh, quite often in his military career. And for him to say that the Rhineland was a very nervous moment should be quite telling on how unsure Hitler was about the potential outcomes of that event. The Rhineland borders four countries. So the Rhineland touches Belgium, Luxembourg, France, and the Netherlands, and also Germany. So this was a really crucial area for Hitler to take control of. If he then had control of the Rhineland, he essentially has a way to get into Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, and France if he so chooses. If he doesn't have control of this Rhineland, he doesn't have a way into these four countries if he wanted to start a conflict. So that's it today on the Rhineland. Have a look on Show My Homework, complete the quiz, and any other tasks set by your teacher.